Hey, welcome back to another Patient's Gamer review. Thank you for joining me once again. Today the agenda is Need for Speed Heat. This was part of the trio of Need for Speed modern games that I procured after I needed a little bit of a break from the type of games that I usually play, action games, the RPGs. I needed something a little bit more simple to reset and to take a load off. And these games are really able to do it. And after I played Need for Speed 2015, completed Need for Speed Payback, Need for Speed Heat was the last one. So it's actually the latest Need for Speed that is available on the old generation of consoles before Need for Speed Unbound. So let's get right into the video and I'll break down every single aspect that you need to know before picking this game up. Let's get into it, gents. Okay, let's start right on with the story. They definitely spent a lot more effort and time on developing a story and having actual characters. But once again, this is actually a usual trend. The main character that you're playing as really is more so playing a backseat role in this. But I'll be honest, the main character playing a backseat role in this game is a lot more weird this time, because this time you're actually able to see the main character, you're able to see him move and operate. He doesn't really speak much. The real main character is probably Anna and Lucas, those two people, the two siblings that you're interacting with and dealing with the story in. They're the individuals who face more of the problems, and you're kind of there along for the ride, and you just win and you're the cool guy, but not much backstory is given on you, and you don't really have much or any character development. The other characters are much more interesting and more developed than you yourself, the main character. They're much more of a bland person and really don't have much to do. So of course this is a street racing game, Need for Speed, and the quality is definitely on the lower side in terms of quality. It's a short campaign. I was genuinely shocked at how short it was. Actually a little bit disappointed at how short the entire game was, but it was what it was. Particularly the ending. The ending is actually confusing. When I first saw the ending, I thought, okay, this is interesting. Is this like a bridge showing that, okay, it's time for act number 2? No, it just ends strangely, very abruptly, and it really took me out personally. And for me personally, it was a little bit disappointing to see how it panned out. Excluding the main campaign, there are driving stories that you are able to partake in with other characters, but of course there aren't any cutscenes in that. And honestly, it's just essentially a race, but during the race, the person that you're doing this mission for, they just talk to you without, trash talking or saying, oh, why aren't you in first? Or if you're in the back of the pack, they say, oh, you need to win this race for you to get this part or whatnot. So yeah, from a narrative perspective, these racing games have known to be on the weaker side, and yeah, that trend definitely continues here. And I'm personally not surprised that is the case. It's alright. It is what it is. It is what it is. But in terms of a narrative perspective, do not buy Need for Speed Heat for that, but it's really short as well. So yeah, rather not. Now, for the very reason you're even here, let's talk about the gameplay, the meat and bones. This is interesting, very interesting. Now note, I came off the back end of playing Need for Speed 2015 and Need for Speed Payback. Immediately as I hopped onto Need for Speed Heat, I personally felt a little bit of a downgrade from Payback. If you aren't part of the racing game community, you won't really understand this, but I'm talking about a sense of speed. If I were to explain this is essentially when you're playing the game, when you're racing, when you're going very fast, how immersive is the experience? Do you feel like you are going very quickly when you are moving at high speeds? Initially, when I played Need for Speed Heat, I felt, this is not it. The sense of speed is definitely on the weaker side in comparison to Payback, and that's initially what I felt. You could also feel that they're using a different engine to the one that was used in the Need for Speed Payback. I don't really know the specifics of that, but you can tell that it's a completely different style to the one that was used in the previous game. It's a lot more grounded. The art style is a lot more grounded, a lot more darker, a lot more pastel-y in terms of an art style. Interesting. It's different, but still good. I'll be honest, in comparison, Miami or Palm City, whatever they want to call it, is actually very beautiful, well developed, and it's a very nice city for you to operate in. Yeah, the issue is, for me, I don't know, perhaps there isn't enough of a disparity, because the map, if we're considering the map, this is what I'm talking about, the map. And because this is a racing game, it's a much more simple gameplay experience. So the aspects that are fundamental are far more important than in comparison to another game. For example, if you're playing an action RPG that has a driving component, the map and the difference in the biomes isn't going to matter too much, because you're interacting with so many different gameplay mechanics that it doesn't really matter. Now, in Need for Speed, the map carries a lot of weight. The map is okay, it's stratified. There's of course the main city, the main area that you're going in, then of course there's the rural area, there's an industrial area, and then the majority of the map is this like countryside. Compared to the other maps that I've played in Need for Speed, I thoroughly enjoy the city area, but everywhere else in comparison to other Need for Speed games, I've definitely preferred that a whole lot more. Yeah, that's definitely my thoughts on that. I prefer the other maps that I've interacted with, probably one of the weaker maps that I've dealt with. The Need for Speed 2015 also has a weaker map, I will be honest. It actually, in hindsight, is probably weaker than this one, but what I will say is that is a different vibe. It goes definitely going for a different type of vibe. So the stratification in the map doesn't really matter, because it's night all the time. It's just an industrial Chicago, like grungy city vibe. So it's a completely different type of thing. But for what they're trying to go for Need for Speed Heat, for me personally, I think the map kind of leaves a bit to be desired. I don't know what it is, but if you play it, I think you will understand. Now that we've talked about this, let's talk about the vehicles and how they handle and how it moves, and of course the police. Now the vehicles are good. Of course, each vehicle has their own specifications. You can get off-road, you can get rally, you can get supercross, you can get track. So there's a huge amount of player customization that you can do with your vehicles, that you can make it in your own way. Player customization in terms of aesthetics, you can put on different wraps, different metal components onto your vehicle to make it unique to you. And there's a huge amount of upgradable components to it, including car chase items such as a radar disruptor and a nitrous refill and a repair kit. All of these things make things very, very interesting and makes for a pretty cool and unique racing experience. Everything is handled quite well. The way nitrous is handled, and if you're someone who enjoys Need for Speed, nitrous is something that is important and as a fundamental component of these racing games. Nitrous is handled all right. The options that you have are okay. For me personally, I would have preferred to at least have one burn option. If you've played Need for Speed games, you know that the burn option is that if you hold the X button, you choose the exact amount of nitrous you want to use in that moment. Unfortunately, in Need for Speed Heat, you don't really have that option. You either have to use a big tank in one big load, or you get two smaller or three smaller tanks that you can use in bursts, but you don't really have as much control as you've had in the previous Need for Speed games. The gameplay is decent, it's good. The handling is alright, it's not extremely difficult. The handbrake is a very, very effective tool for those sharp turns, very, very nice. And of course the normal drifting mechanic is good and consistent. And what I will note is that in this new engine, while in previous Need for Speed games, if you were to crash into small walls, if you were to crash into somewhat larger trees, you'd be stuck and you'd hit those and you come to a complete standstill. An engine change that they choose to make, and I actually think I prefer it. If you smash into a very small wall, you're going to completely crush into it. If you smash into a little bit of a larger tree or a bush, you'll go right through it, go right through the fence. So there aren't a huge amount of things that are indestructible. Things are a lot more brittle in this new Need for Speed game, and I think it actually is for the better, as it makes for a much smoother driving experience. If you crash into just some small wall, your car chase or your race isn't completely over. You still have hope to be able to salvage yourselves. You're just going to be slowed down a little bit. You're not going to completely come to a standstill and have to start this entire 3-lap race all over again. Now, let's talk about the police. But before I talk about the police, I have to talk about an important mechanic that Need for Speed Heat implements that no other Need for Speed game has actually implemented before. In most Need for Speed games, there is a day and night mechanic. As you continue to play the game, you will eventually transpire and go into night time. That's usually how it operates in most video games and most Need for Speed games. Now in Need for Speed Heat, you have an option to play during the day and to play during the night. During the day, you make money, and that's what you use to buy vehicles and to buy upgrades for your car. Now, if you race at night, this is how you get reputation. This is how you, one, progress at the game, you improve your reputation so you can race more people and do campaign missions, and reputation inadvertently unlocks parts and unlocks other cars. This is directly related to the races you do at night and police chases. Now, there are a number of good and bad things about this mechanic. It's very cool as you can essentially choose if you want to get into a car chase, but I definitely do miss racing during the day and a cop just randomly out of nowhere is beginning to chase me. That's a sad thing that's lost, but it is what it is. But I'll be honest with you, one thing I have to give Need for Speed Heat credit for is that these are probably the most aggressive police officers that I've ever interacted with since probably Need for Speed 2005, Need for Speed Most Wanted. What a great game that was, and the police in this game are a whole lot aggressive. There are rhinos coming in, flashbacks came back to me, helicopters and all of that. And what I'll point out to you guys is that because this is a modern game, the modern Need for Speed, the pacing is a lot faster, it's a lot easier to complete the game, and that is essentially translated into every single aspect. It's a lot quicker for you to go from Heat 1 to the maximum Heat level, which is Heat 5. The pressure is on, it's exciting, they're on your nuts. And note, in this map, you are able to fall into water, and that really can mess you up, because if you're in a watery area and you fall into there, you respawn into a really precarious situation and you take a substantial amount of damage, and that makes it unfortunately easier for them to bust you. Now let's point out two things that are somewhat problematic and I would say actually really mess it up or make the game a little bit rubbishy or kind of some not cool in a sense. There are two aspects. One, the multiplier effect and what happens when you get busted, and the damage meter. These are two fundamental components to the Heat, which is essentially what the game is called, Need for Speed Heat, and this is the main event of the game. The damage. In this Need for Speed, your vehicle takes substantial amounts of damage, especially during car chases and police chases. So, as you continue with your races, you're going to continually take damage, be hit, and hammered. If you take a substantial amount of damage, you will be busted. No questions asked. Like, if you take a substantial amount of damage, you will be busted. Now, for me personally, I'm not exactly sure if this was a good decision, because this is what I'll say. Because of that, these car chases, these police car chases can only go on for so long. You will eventually take a substantial amount of damage and you will not be able to go on for a long period of time. I remember way back in the day playing Need for Speed Most Wanted 2005, the original. There were some of the most intense car chases that I've ever had. Maybe it went on for an hour or 30 or 45 minutes, and that's way back in the day. That's when I made a huge amount of progress and I pretty much made all the bounty I needed to make in that. I think I made like a 700,000 bounty or a million something. Huge amount of bounty in one really elaborate and crazy chase. Now, I'm not saying chases should go on for that long, but implementing a damage system that is so substantial and you have a pretty low amount of hit points, it's more realistic. It drastically shortens the amount of time you have in these chases, and secondly, it makes the chases extremely difficult. Very difficult, because if you get busted, you're in a whole lot of trouble. Let's consider the consequences of you getting busted. You are going to lose a substantial amount of money. Let's say you have 100k in the bank. You will lose 60k. Just an example. You will lose 60 to 70k is how much you lose when you get busted. And your rep. Oh man, your rep. They have surprisingly taken somewhat of a Dark Souls perspective to reputation. In this I mean that as you continue to race, all the progress that you've made as you complete your races is stacked up and you hold it. But you're holding it in the palm of your hand like you're cupping some water. You're holding it temporarily. The only way you can successfully cash in your chips is if you make it to your garage without getting busted. That is the problem. So the thing is, in this game, there are some things that they do to try and incentivize you to go on and play at night for as long as possible so you can maximize the amount of reputation you can gain. There are some races at night that are special heat level 3 and special heat level 5. These races that are available to you are essentially you have to piss off the cops to a certain degree for you to be able to enter them. And the benefit about these is that, one, there's a higher rep that you can get, so more reputation and more progress you can make. And secondly, they give you a bonus that you can earn money as well. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this, but in the night races, you make absolutely zero money. You make no money at all. But in these special races at night, you are able to make some money, as the usual formula is that when you do the day races, that's when you make money, and when you play at night, that's when you gain reputation as a street racer. So these special heat level races are able to give you the best of both worlds with these cool and interesting races. So the issue is that I'll get into these races, right? And I would have repaired my vehicle. Now there are garages available, so you can repair your vehicle a maximum amount of 3 times. But depending on where you are in the map, you aren't going to be able to repair your vehicle or find a garage in time. By then, the rhinos messed you up, the corvettes have messed you up, and you are in big trouble. Now the question that I pose to you guys is this really a great mechanic? And the question I really want to pose is, does implementing realism make for a better gameplay experience? This has drastically changed the way we as street racers have to tackle and look at races and the police. Of course, the police have always been somewhat of a nuisance, but they all are also the most fun part of the game. The thing is, if you are perhaps at your last length, you've already used both of your repairs, you are avoiding police officers like the plague, because it is very difficult to escape the police in this game. Even if you have a special heist item, not heist item, but an auxiliary passive item equipped, the radar disruptor, it is still extremely difficult to be able to escape from these police officers. Makes it very difficult. This Need for Speed Heat idea is very interesting, but I will argue that perhaps adding in the damage to your vehicle kind of messed it up, because these guys are difficult enough and you can definitely get messed up and get busted. But I'll be honest, this is probably the most amount of times I've ever been busted in a Need for Speed game. And you know what really hurts by all of it is that you'll do 4, 6 races, right, and earn a huge amount of reputation. If you get busted by the police officers, all of that progress is essentially lost, because you only earn maybe 10,000 rep when you've gained maybe 200k of reputation throughout all your exploits. And all the other disappointing is that not only do you lose the progress that you've made, you also lose an additional amount of progress because they take a large amount of your income as well. So you getting busted is extremely punishing in Need for Speed Heat. Something that, I'll be honest, in other Need for Speed games, being busted was annoying, but true, it wasn't as painful. This is definitely the most painful being busted has been in any other Need for Speed games. And whether this is a good or a bad thing depends on your perspective. For me personally, I think if you just remove the damage numbers, or perhaps you make the vehicles a little bit more beefy, perhaps times it by 2, then I can be like, you know what, fair enough, times it by 2, this is something you can work with. At least my vehicle's beefy, and if I do get busted, it's my own fault. So that's just how personally I feel on the gameplay. The gameplay is good, it's interesting, it's exciting, the sense of speed is good. I did feel it was a bit of a downgrade from Payback, but what I found interesting is that after I completed Need for Speed Heat, I went right back to Payback, and I eventually came to the conclusion that the sense of speed is literally around the same. So if you haven't played a racing game in a while and you're not comparing it directly to anything else, it feels great, it looks cool, it's definitely just a great game for you, so just hop into. Personally, what disappointed me in this game is a little bit how the music was handled. Need for Speed games are very well known for having really memorable soundtracks. And what stood out to me is that they were playing very generic music in this Need for Speed game. Clearly the music selection was not cared about and not much time and effort was put into it, is what I realized is that some of the songs that were in this Need for Speed Heat game were also some of the same tracks that were used in FIFA 2020 actually. So I was a little bit disappointed. No, not FIFA 2020. I'm not sure which FIFA it was, but the same tracks that were used there were used in a FIFA game, and I realized, okay, clearly not too much time and attention and effort was put into this music selection, and some of the songs are a little bit but it's definitely more of an Afrobeats type inspiration to mix with that Miami sound, a little bit that Spanish influence, definitely to try and fit more with that Miami sound. But I'll be honest, there isn't any really memorable soundtracks, and unfortunately Need for Speed have definitely lost that edge in comparison to its older game with its world-renowned soundtracks. And yeah, personally it's a little bit disappointing for me personally. Okay, now that we've mentioned pretty much everything the game has to offer, let's get on over to the value section for you to ensure that you make the best patient gamer decision for yourself. And let's consider the statistics and the overall value of this game. Is this game going to be valuable to you and for your gaming needs? Now let's head on over to how long to beat for you to determine how much gameplay time you're going to get if you focus on the main story and everything else in between. If you focus on the main story for Need for Speed Heat, you'll get some 13.5 hours. If you do the main story and some substantial side content, you'll get 24.5 hours. And this is probably a lot more accurate for all of you guys, as you'll need to probably do quite a couple of the races and earn a decent amount of money, earn a decent amount of reputation for you to get the really cool vehicles that are available to you. Luckily, if you do get the deluxe edition, you will be able to get a couple of these cool vehicles for free, like I did. And you definitely do get a substantial head start in that regard if you get one of these deluxe edition vehicles. Now let's consider the prices that are going to be available to you. If you go ahead and pick up Need for Speed Heat somewhat recently, because I'm looking at these prices today, the best price you'll be able to get for Need for Speed Heat is $11.99, and if you get it via a key shop, it's $10.08. Quite low indeed. And if you are able to look out and be patient, and you are purchasing this game on PC, you will be able to get it for a very, very low price of $3.49 if you're over there and wanting to pick up the game over on PC. And if you want to get it over on PlayStation, these are the deals that are available to you. If you look and wait for a favorable sale, these games go on sale on the regular. So check out PS Deals and a couple of other websites that will be able to notify you on when these games are going to be going on sale. So if you're intelligent and you do that, you will be able to get Need for Speed Heat for $5.99, and I'd highly recommend that you do that when it goes on a very nice and sweet buttery sale. And gents, if you're over here in South Africa and you're also looking to pick up Need for Speed Heat, you can go ahead and pick it up for the quite low price of 115 Rand. That is the price that is available to you if you also look for a very favorable sale. But if I want to drop a little bit of game on you guys, I want you guys to move a little bit smarter as a patient gamer. One of the reasons being a patient gamer is so beneficial is because you're able to get the entire package for a very, very affordable price. So I recommend for all of you guys to go ahead and look for the Need for Speed Heat Deluxe Edition, and this comes with a couple of vehicles that are very, very nice and actually got me through the majority of the game. Very, very much worth it. You can get it for actually a low price of 62 Rand and 45 cents. Crazy cheap. And I want you to notice this. The deluxe edition is actually cheaper than the normal edition on sale. The deluxe edition is cheaper than the normal edition on sale. You guys need to watch out for this all the time if you are purchasing games online. They have very, very deep sales, and if you keep your eyes peeled, you will realize that a lot of these deluxe editions, these ultimate editions, these game of the year editions end up being cheaper than the normal one on the PlayStation Store. You really need to watch out for these type of things, and this is the case for many game titles. It's not common, but it can happen from time to time. And if you're able to watch out on this and pick up on this, I highly recommend that you do so. Go ahead and wait for the deluxe edition to go on sale once again, and go ahead and pick it up. Now that you guys have heard all my thoughts and I've given you a little bit of sauce on how you should be procuring this game, let me give you my overall rating for Need for Speed Heat. This is a decent game. I enjoyed it quite a lot, and it's solid. It's very solid. I do feel that the story is short, and you could feel that more was on the way, and more was supposed to procure, and more was supposed to happen, but you can see something was cut, or maybe they really messed up the ending, but more was desired by the end of it all. But if I'm giving it a rating out of 10, I give it a 7 out of 10. It is a very good game. It's nice, it's enjoyable. If you get this game on sale, you will not regret it. It's a good and nice racing experience. Yeah, if you're a racing game connoisseur, this is a game that you will enjoy. Is this going to be a Need for Speed classic? Probably not, Probably not. I wouldn't put this as one of my favorite ever Need for Speed games. It's not in my top 3. No, actually, no. Probably, okay. It's probably in my top 3, perhaps. But yeah, it's not a classic that you'll come back to in 10 years like, oh man, I really want to play Need for Speed Heat. Nah. It's a game you look fondly back on, but it's not a classic. But yeah, guys, those are my thoughts on the game. Tell me your thoughts down there in the comments. What are your thoughts on it? Is there a racing game that you guys would like me to try out? Tell me down there in the comments, and let's have a dialogue. Do you agree with my rating? Just tell me your thoughts down there in the comments, and let's have a discussion. Take it easy, gents.